So we left off at the end of Paul's second missionary journey. He spent a year and a half in Corinth, and he is about to leave there. And while he was there, he wrote First and Second Thessalonians. So we've already covered all that, and so he is leaving Corinth. As he leaves, he's going to take Priscilla and Aquila with him, and they are going to cross over the Aegean to Ephesus, and Priscilla and Aquila are going to stay there. So let me show you where we're at. Over here is Jerusalem, down here, where you can see this little weird sea and river. That's the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. And so here's Jerusalem. Up here is Antioch. That's his sending church. Okay, that is the first big Gentile church, or at least mixed church with a lot of Gentiles in it. And that's his missionary sending church. That's where he went from. And then he has been way over here in Achaia, which is this is what we would call Greece. In that time, the top half was called Macedonia, the northern part. The bottom part was called Achaia. Athens is right over here. And then across this tiny little isthmus right here is Corinth. And there's a canal there today. At that time, if they wanted to get their going around here was very dangerous for a ship. So they would have slave labor haul the ship across the 5-mile isthmus right here. And so that's how they did that. And then Corinth is where he's been at the end of his second missionary journey. And he spent there, Thessalonica is up there. So he is going to cross over here to Ephesus. Priscilla and Aquila are going to come with him, and they are going to move from Corinth to Ephesus and set up their home there. Paul is only going to stay there for a little bit, and his planning is to come back, but he wants to get back to Jerusalem. He's going to go up to Jerusalem, and then he's going to go down to Antioch, and he's going to stay there for a while. It doesn't say how long, but if we're trying to work out the times, you got to go, okay, there's at least a few months there, otherwise your years don't play out correctly, okay? So he's there for a while, and in the meantime, Priscilla and Aquila up here in Ephesus are setting up their business. They're getting their tent making shops set up on the Agora. The word Agora means their shopping center, and it's their mall. It's their outside mall. It's their shopping center. It's called the Agora, and so they're setting up there. And while Paul is over here, down here in Egypt, in Alexandria, is a man named Apollos. And Apollos is very, very well trained in the Old Testament, and he has heard the message of John the Baptist. And he knows that Messiah is coming really soon. He's put all this stuff together. He just hasn't gotten the information that he came. So he is going to go to Ephesus, and he is going to run into, can you imagine, by coincidence, he runs into Priscilla and Aquila, and he starts trying to evangelize them, and they in turn upgrade him to what's really going on. He is a very proficient preacher, and he is very, very, very well in tune with the Old Testament, and he knows those prophecies, and he can speak very well to Jewish people. So he's got this great desire, and he is going to go over the Aegean. This is the Aegean Sea. He's going to go over the Aegean to Corinth. Now you got to remember, Paul has left Corinth. So Apollos, this is perfect. God has this all planned out. Apollos goes to Corinth, and he ministers there for quite some time very effectively. And so I would think that he probably was very, at least effective in communicating to the Jewish community there about that Jesus was Messiah. And he stays there for quite a while. and then he leaves and goes on to wherever God sends him next. So it doesn't tell us where God sent him next, so I don't know. I can't tell you that. So, but that's the end of the second missionary journey. We are now in the end of Acts chapter 18, going into chapter 19, and we're starting Paul's third missionary journey. I know several people who are with him on this trip, but it doesn't, just because their names will come up later, but it doesn't say like who's with him as he leaves. Like in the second journey, he takes Silas and picks up Timothy, and it has all these things. So I don't have that, doesn't say that directly, but we will find out later that Titus is with him, that Timothy is with him, that Luke will be with him on and off, different things like that. Okay, so he's going to go by land. He's going to go north from Antioch. He's going to go through the Cilician Gates, which is this very, it's like crossing the Rocky Mountains on foot, and he's going to travel, and he's going to go through all these cities. He's going to encourage them, reteach them, see how they're doing, make sure their churches are going well, all those things. And this time, since this is his second trip like this time God is going to let him go to Ephesus. Remember last time he couldn't go to Ephesus, and what was his plan, and he couldn't go there. This time he is going to go there, and he is going to be there for 3 years, which is his longest stay in one single place, other than prison. So he did spend 4 years in prison. Those were 2 different prisons, so you could say, no, Ephesus was still as longest in any one single place. So he's going to go there, and that's where we are picking up today. He's in Ephesus. There's a few things going on in the country of Rome, in the Empire of Rome. First of all, while he's there, Paul is going to be there from about 53 to 56 approximately, and I know that's a 4-year span, and I told you he's there for 3 years, but it could be the end of 53 to the beginning of 56. It's just difficult to exactly nail it down, so we don't get all those details. At 54, Claudius is going to die. That's the emperor. Claudius dies in 54, and when he dies, his edict that sent all the Jews out of Rome is void. And so at this point, he had, I remember I told you about how he sent the Jews out of Rome. That's why Priscilla and Aquila left in the first place. So they, that's void, which means the Jewish community can move back into the city of Rome. And eventually, Priscilla and Aquila will move back to the city of Rome. So that we know for sure happened because that's described in Romans. But at the same time, Nero becomes emperor in 54. And it's interesting, Nero's mother is Agrippina. That's right. And Agrippina happens to be Claudius's 4th wife, but Nero is not Claudius's son. So, but Agrippina wants to make sure that Nero becomes emperor, so she has all the other contenders assassinated. So only Nero can become, So this is the kind of what goes on in Roman government, and that's how that is. At the same time, there's another guy who happens to be, I gotta look here. Claudius's mother had a slave named Felix, and Felix purchases his freedom, or gets assigned his freedom, and his brother works for Claudius, and so his brother talks Claudius in putting Felix as procurator of the area of Judea. Now I'm telling you this because Felix is going to come into the story in a couple of weeks. And it is unheard of for an ex-slave to be put in this position. For one thing, that's a senatorial class. And there's two classes of rulership. One is the equestrian class, which is your more common people being raised, and the other is the senatorial class, which is like your aristocracy. A slave never goes to there. But Felix gets promoted to procurator. Paul will stand before Felix. And Felix is going to cause havoc in the area of Judea, along with everybody else who rules in the area of Judea. But he particularly is going to cause havoc. We'll get into that in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not exactly sure when. I'm just telling you that that's his story. He's an ex-slave. There is one historian, I don't think it was Josephus, I think it was one of the other ones, who said that Felix is a free man ruling as a slave. So that's how he makes his decisions. And he does most everything he does by bribery. So the more money he gets, you get your way. Whoever wins in courts is the one who gave him the money. So that's how he rules. So that's going to be the issue when Paul stands before him in the future. But I'm jumping way ahead. I'm not supposed to do that. But anyway, so that's why I'm telling you about these people, so that we can kind of understand what's going on in their system of government. So in the same time, there's been two people that have been ministering in Corinth. One was Apollos, and one is probably Peter. When Peter got rescued from the prison by the angel, and he walks out and he knocks on the door, and the girl doesn't remember, she hears his voice and thinks it's like just sound and doesn't open the door and all that kind of bit, He goes back to, sends word back to James, Jesus' brother, and tells him that he's free. And then it says he left Jerusalem. He left the territory. Doesn't tell us where he went or what he did, but there's church history that says that he started his own mission trips and went around. He ends up in Rome, but that's not for quite a while still. So it is mentioned that he was in Corinth. And he was in Corinth after Paul was in Corinth, and before Paul wrote 1 Corinthians. That's only about a 2-year window. So I'm telling you that it's very likely that Peter ministered in Corinth during this time while Paul is around here and coming through. Peter and Apollos have been over here ministering, and then they've both left, gone on to whatever God leads them as their next mission trip. Okay, that's all the background. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about Ephesus. I may give some of you quizzes. No. Ephesus is not a port city today. It was then, and they had to dredge the canal that opened up the port to keep it in, to keep it so the ships could go in and out. But it was a very important port city at that time. The port has not been dredged, so it is about 7 miles inland right now. But so you look at it, you go there today, and you go, this is not a port city. It was 7 miles inland. It's because they no longer dredged the canal. Okay? So, but that time it was, and it was the center of government for Asia, this part right here. So in my brain, as I was originally learning this, I figured that all of Turkey was called Asia. But this part is called Cilicia, this part is called Galatia, this part is called Asia, and they're set up with different states with different governors, okay? So all of Asia, their capital city is Ephesus, and it is the leading city. It's got about 200,000 people in it, and it is the important one. The big issue of Ephesus is that it is also what they call a free city, which means it gets to have its own elections and government within itself, rather than having it assigned from Rome, okay? Rather than saying, here is your governor, here is this and that. The advantage to that is they know they don't pay Roman taxes. That's really important, and that's going to come into the story because they don't pay Roman taxes, so they want to keep their status as a free city. They have a ruler, and he's called the city clerk. That's how it's translated. That just sounds like the person who stands behind the desk and looks like a secretary. That's not who it is. This would be like the governor or the mayor of the city, the top person in charge of that city. So that's what that's like there. Their god is a goddess named Artemis. And Artemis is Greek word for Diana. And she is this thing that fell from the sky, and she is the goddess of fertility and prosperity, and your animals grow, and da 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 da. And do you guys remember the idol? Remember seeing it? No? Okay, they found this, the one we saw was a replica, that it was about this tall. The original one is about 9 feet tall. And it is this beautiful lady whose the front side is covered with breasts. I mean, like 24 of them, all over the place, and they're hanging out naked. And around
Busting
her,
out all over.
huh? What'd you say?
She's busting out.
Yeah, she's busted out all over. Yes, she is. And then around her legs are all the animals that she is helping to grow and prosper and all that. And they worship her something crazy. And they have a temple there called the Temple of Artemis. And it's no longer in existence. It was destroyed, I think, in 260 something by the Goths. But it was this huge temple. It took 120 years to build. And it is 4 times the size of the Parthenon. So it's one, it holds this 9-foot statue inside. Actually, excuse me, it's not 9 feet, it's 40 feet. I got my information mixed up. This is a 40-foot statue, and it fits inside this temple. Okay? And not only do the people of Ephesus worship Artemis, the people all over the empire worship Artemis, and they come there as pilgrims and whatnot. And of course, nobody wants to go home without souvenirs. So the idol-making business in Ephesus is huge. And that's where the silversmiths come into the story. And the archaeology has actually found a brass mold that what they would sell was a little miniature temple with a little idol inside of it. And they have found the brass mold with the stuff to pour the silver in and make the idol. And I love finding all these little bits of evidence, because the more times I find a little piece of evidence that proves the Bible true, it proves the Bible true. And I've been finding them all over the place. So I've been trying to tell you about all these little things. And so I got a couple more for today to tell you about too. But so there's that, and so that's a really big deal. And then the other thing I would tell you about, and Martha left the room, I wanted to tell you about the theater there. The theater there, do you remember the theater there? Okay, it's this huge theater. And it's built as in a semicircle, and I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's got like 3 main levels, and it has a big stage or a platform down in front, and the background of it has buildings behind the stage that have mostly crumbled down, but most of the steps are still there. It seats 24,000. It's that big. And your first thought is, and here's what I was doing. I was walking up on the highest row. So I'm in the bleachers, way up high on the 3rd level, and they have no microphone system. Not at all. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people just mulling all over the place. So that's because all these tourists are there that day, right? And then there's this one lady who walks down onto the stage with her friend, and they just stand there and start singing Amazing Grace. And it echoes all the way up, all through the entire stadium, over all the noise. And I'm thinking, and we need microphones today. So I was greatly blessed. Do you remember that?
Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, this huge one. That happens to be the biggest theater they found in the Roman Empire so far.
Is that the?
Yes, that's the idol, yes.
Yes.
You can look it up. If I was really good at technology, I'd be showing you slides of these places. But that's like, yeah. So that's going on. So Martha, thank you for singing for me at the bottom of the theater in Ephesus. It was beautiful, and I got to hear her lovely voice as it echoed all the way through this huge theater. Yeah, it's really neat. Okay, so Paul gets back there. I think I've caught up with all that stuff. And when he's in Ephesus, I have found, to my ability to figure it out, 6 main events that took place for Paul in Ephesus. And the first one is what he does is he gets there, he probably goes and finds Aquila and Priscilla, would be my guess. And there's these 12 men who are followers who he has discovered, and they are kind of like Apollos in that they know all about the baptism of John the Baptist, but they don't know past that. So he mentors them, tells them, and they all get baptized, and then he lays his hands on them and the Spirit comes to them. These are all Gentile men, and I think that these are critical men for evangelizing this whole area, because he is going to teach them on, and these are going to be like his inner core group of students, and they are going to study under him. He's going to go into the synagogue, and he's going to teach there. They were at least interested in how he usually gets thrown out, like within two Saturdays, 2 Sabbaths. I was going to say Sundays, and that. He gets thrown out. Well, they permit him to teach for 3 months in the synagogue, and then they throw him out. So they listened well and rejected it, and then they throw him out. And at that point, he starts a school at Tyrannus, I think, and that is a building that might have been an educational type building. And most of the people who have been trying to figure out where all these things are located at think it is right corner to the Library of Celsius, which, by the way, hasn't been built yet. It isn't built till the end of the 2nd century. When you go there, you don't know that. It looks like it's there. Do you remember the Library of Celsius? It's you could look that up. That is a very famous looking piece of architecture you'll recognize. And when you go in there, carved all over the walls of this library is all these Greek words all over the place. They're not the way I'm used to reading it. They're not in small letters. I'm used to Greek small letters, like it's all capitals. And they all, there's no space between words. So you see on, and it's really hard to identify what you found, but I did find one that looks like this. And it had blah, 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 and I found that, and that is Biblios, and it means a book. And it is also where the Bible goes. So I was like, oh, I found one I could read, but I was so excited. I read one word. That's my dorky side. But you all know. So So he goes and he teaches them for all the time, a couple years there. And then, oh, here, I jumped ahead a bit. It's in the second one. Yeah. All right, while he's teaching there and time goes by, he gets some visitors. And they are from Corinth. And one is named Chloe. And she's actually from Centria, which is the port city right here on the Aegean side of this isthmus right here. And on the other side is another port city. But she's part of the congregation at Corinth, or spread out congregations at Corinth. And she brings news to Paul that things are not going real smoothly in Corinth. And at the same time, 3 other guys show up. Their names are Stephanos and Fortunatus and Archaeus, I think. And they show up with the same information. And on top of that, a letter arrives from Corinth with a ton of questions. What do we do about this? 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 And so Paul sits down sometime during this time, and he writes them a letter. And that is called what we call 1 Corinthians. It's actually his second letter to them. But we don't have the first letter. So we could call the first letter pre-Corinthians, I don't know. And then the letter we have is 1 Corinthians. So there's a letter prior to this one. And in this letter, he is going to address several issues. They have a lot of problems, and they are currently running without good leadership. And whoever was, because I wouldn't expect Apollos or Peter to leave them, or even Paul, without some good leadership. So there's troubles going on in their leadership. And they are arguing about who should be followed. Do you follow Peter? Do you follow Paul? Do you follow Jesus? Do you follow Apollos? Who do you follow? So it's separating the church. So they have that problem. They also have problem of being so smart. And that's called puffed up with gnosis, or puffed up with knowledge. Gnosis means knowledge, and they're very smart, but they're not using their information in agape. So he is going to give them this, how to do this. So a lot of information without agape does you no good whatsoever. That's what they're going to do. They are accusing each other in court. They're taking each other to court. They have gross immorality going on. Like when I say gross immorality, read chapter 5 of 1 Corinthians and you will see very gross immorality. And that's going on, and it's being acceptable in the church. Now, they live in Corinth. Do you remember the situation of the city of Corinth? It's a very immoral city, and it's a norm there. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see stuff all over the place, out on the streets or whatever. It's just like that. So for them to say this is okay sounds like normal culture to them, and it's not okay. So lots of times normal culture in our day is not okay. Just application then. They have marriage questions. They have been using their freedom in Christ to not care about how it offends anybody. So they eat whatever is sacrificed to whomever. And no matter how that is, if you got a brand new believer who's maybe he's a Jewish believer, and you are a strong believer, quote unquote, and you eat this pig sacrificed to idols in front of your brand new baby Jewish believer, can you imagine how much that is going to cause problems for that person? So that's what's going on in that. Yeah. So that's what's going on with that. They have made a mockery of the Lord's table. And they have a lot of spiritual gifts, very, very spiritually gifted, and they're using it to cause tons of confusion in the church, and who's more special than others, and who's more elevated than others, rather than using it to serve, and that's what they're for. So there's all these problems. So as Paul goes through this and the results are you have a very divided church and you have a very spiritually immature church. So he is going to write them a letter. And that letter is 1 Corinthians. And he is going to send that letter with Timothy. Timothy is a great teacher. Paul asked them to please respect Timothy when he comes. Timothy is not an older man. He's a younger man. He's probably a non-tough man in appearance, you know? He's just a gentler looking man. He's a man that knows the information. He's a good teacher, and he can help them solve their problems. And so he sends Timothy to them, and then he moves on with all the stuff going on in Ephesus. So that's great. And sends off Timothy, and Timothy's going to solve the problem. Or God is going to solve the problem. All right. In the meantime, things are going on in Ephesus. These 12 guys are going out, and the gospel is spreading all over the place. So much so that we have churches that are, doesn't say exactly they were established this time, but you go a little bit further in the story and you find out that they are established. And prior to this time, they weren't established, so my assumption is they are established during this time. And that is at Hierapolis, that is at Colossae, that is at Laodicea. You're going to recognize some of these names. That is at Thyatira, that is at Pergamum, Sardis, Smyrna, all these ones and other ones all around. These are the cities all around here. They're also the cities that are somewhat named in Revelation, okay? Some of those same ones. And they're all being built up. When we get to there, we'll find out that they found all kinds of evidence of churches built there, all kinds of crosses carved into the stone here and there, all kinds of things all over this place, to the point that people are turning to Jesus Christ all over, where the idol worship is going down, which is the whole point. It's what's supposed to happen. That's great. In the meantime, there's another part of Ephesian culture that we haven't mentioned yet, and that's called the magicians, and the sorcery, and the demon worship, and the magic, and that is a big pervading culture throughout Ephesus, and they're all over the place. And unfortunately, even though Torah says, no, this is not permitted, the Jewish high priests in each area often do this. And there's one of them in Ephesus, and his name is Sceva, and he has 7 sons, and they're all going around casting out demons and doing all this stuff with the magic spells. They have found in Ephesus amulets and magic necklaces and bracelets and rings. They have found all these intricate things all over the place that have to do with demon worship and all these magic spells and whatnot. Yeah, it's crazy. And so, when Paul's walking through the streets and he's he's doing all kinds of miracles. He's healing people all over the place. As a matter of fact, one time it says that if his handkerchief fell on you, you would be healed. Okay, so that catches the attention of the sons of Sceva. And it reminds me of touching Jesus' robe and being healed, or when Peter's walking through Jerusalem right after Pentecost and his shadow falls on someone and they're healed. And so this is catching the attention of the Greek people, the pagan people who aren't, this would really catch your attention. So those 7 sons of Sceva decide they're going to do the same thing. So here's some guy in some messed up thing, and he's got demon possession, and he's a wreck, and the sons of Sceva said, in the name of Jesus Christ, and Paul the apostle come out of him, and the demon yells back, I know who Jesus is, and I know who Paul is, but I have no idea who you are. And that becomes so violent that that one man takes down 7 sons in such a way that they are stripped naked of all their clothes, and they have to run out into the city like that. I know, it's like, okay, well, you know that they've actually found parchments and papyrus. This is down in Egypt, but they have found parchments and papyrus where they have magic spells that they say, in the name of Jesus Christ, come out of you. It's written in there. So that's just really something. So
It's kind of amazing that they know the power of Jesus and yet they still don't worship Jesus.
it is. That's the whole, that's
That's
the
the point.
That's the point, yeah, and this is going to come up again when Demetrius decides to have a riot, you know, and so it's just really crazy. So evidently there are so many magician-type magic people in Ephesus that see this, realize that they're wrong, believe in Jesus Christ, but there's this huge turnover of the satanic thing, and they bring their spells, it's probably into the center of the marketplace, the agora. There's a big open area in the center, and burn them into this huge fire. And it says that it was worth 50,000 drachmas. So a drachma is a day's wage. So what is the average person now? Like if you worked an 8-hour day and you made $20 an hour, that's pretty low. I mean, that's not real high pay, but that's okay. Then if you figure that out mathematically, that's about $7 million worth of stuff they burn that day. That's a huge, I mean, how many people would believe in Jesus Christ and say, okay, I will take my $100,000 investment that is in something that's not right and burn it because I want to believe in Jesus Christ. I mean, I don't see that kind of work today. Not too much anyway. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what this turnover was like. You know?
For a rich man to get in.
It's very hard for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven, yes. But here these guys are, and they burn all this, all their magic books and spells. And that was a huge, big thing. Okay, well, Timothy is going to come back from Corinth, and we'll pick up there with what happens then after you guys take a break. Okay. Where Timothy comes back, and it's not good news. The churches, things have gotten worse, things have gotten terrible, and I'm sure Timothy is very discouraged. I would not at all think that Timothy did a bad job. I just think that we have some difficulties in this church. And one of the things that is happening in this church is that they've started to really seriously ridicule Paul. They've demeaned him, they've insulted him, they've called him false, they've said that he's not a true apostle. They're seriously downgrading Paul to the point where his information is no longer considered reliable, which is a real serious problem because of all the things that are coming at them, his information is the one that is reliable. So obviously they're not evaluating this correctly. It reminds me of what happened in Galatia. Do you remember way back when Paul visits Galatia and then he's back and then he has to write this letter to them explaining to them that the Judaizers have come in and have given them a different gospel. So that's the book of Galatians was written as a defense of what is the truth and what is really the means of salvation. And it seems like this has happened in Corinth. So, Paul writes another letter, and this letter we do not have, and I'm kind of glad we don't have this letter. This letter is a hard-nosed, kick him in the butt, get him moving, straighten him out, severe discipline from a father type figure to them. And he comes down hard on them. And he calls it in 2 Corinthians, it's going to be called the sorrowful letter. I think that's putting it really nice. And he will not send it with Timothy. He's going to send it with Titus. Now, the difference between Timothy and Titus is they're both great preachers. They're both really, really, really great. Timothy is a nice young man. Titus is your, what do you call it, the guy who guards the door at a bar? The bouncer, okay? Titus is your tough.
And all you ladies know that.
Titus is your tough, you're not gonna fight with him, and he's not gonna sugarcoat it, and he's not gonna be sweetsy. You probably won't get a hug out of him, and he's your tough, hard-nosed guy. And he sends this letter to Titus. Okay, so this, I'm sure, this was very, very difficult for Paul to write. When he says it's a sorrowful letter, I think he's talking about his own heart and how much he did not want to have to write this letter to them. And he knows that there are people in the church who are responsive, because every church has the extreme on both sides. And so and they have to hear it too. So this is very hard on them. It's very hard on everybody. Both sides are having this really difficult time. At the same time, things are going on in Corinth that are both expanding the ministry like crazy and attacking him like crazy. So he's got, I'm trying to imagine the emotions he's going through between the excitement of the response in Corinth and the attacks coming on. He is going to describe the attacks coming on as the sentence of death against him, that he was about to die. It was that serious. And I think this is different from what's going to happen in the theater here really soon. He describes his time in Ephesus as using the term as being thrown to the wild beasts at Ephesus. And it was the sentence of death against him. So I went in to look at this really carefully. Was this literal? Was he thrown to the wild beasts at Ephesus? Or is this a figure of speech describing how difficult this would be? And I think it's a figure of speech. For one thing, there is no arena in Ephesus. Nobody has found, an arena is not a small thing. Think of the Colosseum in the Rome. All right, you cannot have wild beasts in the theater. There's no wall between the stage and the people. The wild beasts would attack the people. So you know that is not the center for wild beasts. They have another place that they call the stadium, and that is a long thing that looks like this. And your crowd sits here, and this is where the races take place. So they go around like this and around like this, but two sides are open. So that's not an arena where you can have wild animals. And so I don't think it was literal, that he really was thrown to the wild animals. I think this is a figure of speech that he is using to try to present to them how strong this attack was. The other thing is he's a Roman citizen, and by law, Roman citizens cannot be thrown to wild beasts. So there's that. So if they did that, they would be breaking that rule. And as we're going to find out here in a little bit, the city clerk, the head guy, is trying to keep the peace and keep his city as a free city, so they don't have to pay taxes to Rome. He's not going to take a Roman citizen and throw him to the beasts. because that would destroy that status. But Paul describes it like that, so he sends off Titus. We're probably at the end of his 3 years, we're probably around year 56, and he wants to stay in Ephesus till Pentecost, and then he's got his plans. His original plans were to stay in Ephesus till Pentecost, go over to Corinth, stay there with them for a little bit, go up through Macedonia, and encourage all these guys to come back to Corinth, right here, pick up over here, and then head out to Jerusalem by the following Pentecost. So that's a year's worth of time to accomplish it. And so that's his plan. That plan gets changed because of what just happened in Corinth. And if he goes back there right now, that's not going to be a pretty picture. He just wrote this letter. He sent Titus. There needs to be something between them to calm this situation down. And so he's not going back right now. So he changes his plans. They will accuse him of being wishy-washy because he changed his plans for their benefit. So there's all kinds of stuff going on here, and you can tell that whoever is leading the place in Corinth is doing everything they can to stir the pot and make it as severe as possible so that they will reject Paul's message, which is why I kind of have the feeling that it's not written anywhere, that's the same type of Judaizers that did that in Galatia. Because the pagans wouldn't care, but the Judaizers would. So, and that's the same thing that happened in the Jerusalem conference, right back in Acts 15. That was all over the place. It was a real serious thing. So he does not go back, and then around this time, the Silversmith Guild has lost so much money that the leader of the Silversmith Guild, whose name is Demetrius, is like, okay, I've had enough. I gotta get rid of Paul. And the way he does this is to start a riot. Now, Paul's life has not been easy. You know, you read through the story, and if you start to put the pieces together and you go, oh, he spent 3 years in Ephesus, and it was a nice ministry there, and he taught at the place, and you just don't really realize the reality of what was going on in his life. And the more I study Paul, the more I go, oh, man, I can't wait to spend half of eternity listening to you tell me everything that happened. Put it on the big screen and let me watch it all. I want to see it, because there's so much more to it that I don't know. Things are happening all over. People are coming in and they're getting real excited about Jesus Christ and sharing it with their neighbors and whatnot, and the next person comes in with a machete. You know, life is like this for him. And when he goes through 2 Corinthians and he describes, remember that list of, I've been shipwrecked, I've been chained, I've been this and that. You don't even hear when those things happened. And that is written before he was shipwrecked, that we have heard of. So we know he was shipwrecked at least 3 times before the one that's written in Acts. So stuff is going on there, and isn't it kind of nice that, I just thought of this, if God had explained in Acts the details of the hardship of Paul, our first missionary, his life, how many people would sign up to be missionaries? Nobody. And at the same time, Luke is not present at this time, because as he writes this story in Acts, it's in the third person. He will join. If you read through it, you'll find out, oh, pretty soon it's we. Oh, it's they. Then it's we. Then it's they. So he comes and goes in and out of the story. So whoever's telling the story, whoever's passing the information on to Luke, is not making issue out of the hard times. That just makes me so impressed with Paul. He is not making an issue out of the hard times. And how many times in my life do I focus on my hard times and not my good times? It's just part of me that I do that. You know, and then I forget that, wow, I just had this great blessing come by. I go, yeah, but this great blessing just happened, yeah, but, you know, and you forget. And I thought, I really need to learn more from Paul. So, well, anyway, Demetrius is not pleased, and he is going to go, and his business is in the middle of that agora, that shopping thing. And that's where the tourists would go through. He's in a main passageway, he's walking through there, and he's not getting business, and neither are the other ones in the silversmith, or bronze, or the whole tourist industry that is happening in Corinth at that time. And so he starts a riot, he starts talking it up, and they all swarm the theater. Now they fill the theater. The theater is 24,000. And he gets them chanting, and he says, this guy has stopped our worship of Artemis, this guy has stopped our industry, this guy has stopped our income, everything's being destroyed by this guy. And so they start chanting, great is Artemis of the Ephesians. And they do that for 2 hours. And most of them there don't know what's going on. They just are mob control, they're mob thinking, and they're just following the mob, and this is what's going on, we gotta join in and do this. It reminds me of a couple years, maybe a year and a half ago or so, after the October 7th thing down where they down in Hamas attacked Gaza, yes. And there was it was all over the place, and half the people are on this side and half the people are on the Palestinian side, and there was this big protest down in Los Angeles. And I don't remember where I saw it. But there's this one lady, she's leading the protest, and she's got a great big sign that says, from the river to the sea, and she's shouting, and she's leading, and she's going like this, and she's leading this whole protest. And she's very loud and getting all kinds of people. And then a reporter comes along, and he says to her, what's your sign mean?
She had no idea.
She had no idea. She didn't know that she's trying to talk about from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, that they were trying to get Palestinians, Hamas, to take over the entire Israeli area.
And destroy the Israel.
And destroy the Israeli area. She had no idea. But she's leading it. She's probably paid.
She's been seen in other riots.
But even the principle is the same. How many of these guys were at the theater in Ephesus just screaming and going for it and had no clue?
It's a party.
Yeah, and that's their God, and yay. And maybe they don't even have business affected. I wonder how many new believers were there and got sucked into this. Anyway, so it's going on. Now, 2 of Paul's associates, one is Demas and the other is who? Not sure. Try to get on stage and calm the crowd. Now, you go down there and you hear Martha singing on stage. That's great, but there was not a riot going on in the stands. And there was not 24,000 people. I'm sorry, there should have been, Martha, because you were so great. But there was not 24,000 people there. And they are not rioting, shouting, and screaming. So if you had a microphone, could you calm the crowd down? I don't know. Anyway, those two did not calm the crowd down. Those are two of Paul's friends. They go in there. Fortunately, they are not hurt. There's another guy that goes in there, and he's a Jewish guy, and he goes in there to try to let them know that this Paul is not associated with the Jews. He might be Jewish, but he's not. So they're trying to separate that, because this looks like this mob is going to destroy everybody Jewish. And at that time, they're thinking that the Christians are just part of the Jewish community. So they're going to kill them all, get rid of them all, get them out of there. And so he tries to stop that. That doesn't work either. And eventually, the city clerk goes there. Now, how? I have no idea how he got them to calm down. But he stands up there, and he must have been more of a Titus guy than a Timothy type guy. And he stands there on the platform, and they're going berserk, and he gets them to stop. And he finally kind of yells at them. He said, if you have a legal problem with this guy, take it to court. Don't do this. And he goes, you know what you're risking? And he tells this to the whole group. You're risking our position in front of Rome. You're risking our ability to be a free city. You're risking our ability, because this is an illegal assembly, and we are breaking the laws. And Rome will come in, and they don't care if they bring in their legionaries and come in. They're not just going to walk in and say, oh, we got to solve this problem. They're going to come in with soldiers and solve this problem. And so he gets them to disperse. Demetrius, it's either on a stone or it's on a parchment that it has been found that there is a man named Demetrius who was in charge of the guild, the Silver Guild, and who is also the caretaker of the Temple of Artemis, who lived in the middle of the mid to the end of the 1st century. Now, if that's a coincidence, is that the same Demetrius? I don't know for absolutely sure, but that is so much identical of the story that it would be hard to say that's not the same Demetrius. And he who lived in Ephesus at that time. So that's a piece of evidence that that guy really lived and that this thing really happened. And those just give me the goosebumps when I find those and all over the place. So that's pretty cool. They get dispersed. It all calms down. Have no idea if Demetrius gets his money back. I have no idea if his business gets better. I have no idea. Maybe he took Paul to court. Maybe he realized he was going to lose this one. I don't know. That's the end of that story. So, and the town clerk dismisses them all. And, okay, so Paul stays there until Pentecost. I told you about that. He had a very effective ministry. I told you all about that. There's a place where Priscilla and Aquila have risked their lives to save Paul at this time. That's recorded in Romans. You kind of have to be like a detective and go through the Bible. And if you read the beginning and the end of the different letters, you find all kinds of little information that you don't know that isn't included in Acts. So it's kind of fun being this detective and go through and reading these things and finding these little pieces. But in there it says that Priscilla, he says, this is his letter to Romans. He says, say hi to Priscilla and Aquila who risked their lives to save me. Okay, so I suspect that happened during this time in Ephesus, that he did that. There was, he has all kinds of things like that. And there's a few little details. Luke describes the churches of Asia as churches. So there's the plural, that's where I get the information that he started that all these other churches got started during this time, because he describes it as the churches of Asia. And Priscilla and Aquila are going to have a church in their house when we get to Rome. He's probably had one in Ephesus also. May have had one in Corinth also. So there's that. And the rest of my time, I'm going to try to cover the book of 1 Corinthians in 30 minutes.
You may have to be in your paper.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is we're going to discover that Paul is going to write at least 4 letters to Corinth. There may have been more than that. There's 4 mentioned. The first one is that one that we don't know of. The second one is what we call 1 Corinthians. The third one is that horrible, sorrowful letter, which is very sorrowful. And the fourth one is 2 Corinthians. So you could call this one 0.5, 1, 1.5, and 2. I don't know. But 2, his second and his fourth letters are 1st and 2nd Corinthians. And 1 Corinthians is the one that he wrote, that he sent with Timothy. And yes, they have problems, and yes, but the big explosion of problems had not occurred yet. Okay, so he writes this letter. And they have all kinds of things going on. And it hit me as I'm just looking at it, that he spends the first 9 verses reminding these people who they are in Christ. What is their identity? He's going to come out, he's got to deal with all those issues. But he starts off with who they are. And I think that's really cool. This shows his great love for them. He doesn't start off, smacking them across the face. He starts off with reminding them who they are. I think that's really cool. He calls them sanctified. I have to say, if I was writing a letter to the Corinthians, I wouldn't have started with the word sanctified. It only goes to show his heart to them. No matter how rough he has to get, his heart is, he adores these Corinthians. And they are saints by calling. I mean, how cool. He's trying to remember. And they are recipients of grace and peace. There's no grace going on there, and there's no peace going on there, and yet that's who they are. Isn't this cool? It's really, really cool. They've been enriched in speech and knowledge. Christ is confirmed in them. That's like guaranteed. That's cool. They have every spiritual gift. They have the spiritual gifts like you can't believe. They are eagerly awaiting Jesus' return. That's going to be some of them. By the time we get to chapter 15, we're going to find out that some of them aren't eagerly awaiting Christ's return. They don't even think he will return. So there's that. Look at this. They are confirmed blameless in the day of Christ. Can you imagine looking at your teenager who has just wrecked the car because he snuck too much to drink and fortunately did not kill himself or anybody else? And he comes home, and the dad who loves him beyond imagination has to deal with this. And his love is going to be severe. It needs to be severe. And he's going to say, do you know what, son? In Jesus Christ, you are blameless. So I read this and I go, wow, that's how Jesus sees me on my worst days. And this is just the introduction to the letter. You're called into fellowship with his son. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be interacting with Jesus all the time. You're supposed to be like sitting with him, walking with him, talking with him, eating with him, driving with him, all this stuff. That's how Paul opens this letter. And then he has to deal with the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is this big mess of non-unity. And so he is going to deal with that. He's going to tell them that it's not about following Peter. It's not about following Apollos. It's not about, and the guys who yelled, "I follow Jesus," were doing it in the same way as the others. So even that was not real. Okay, so because you read that and you think, well, that's the right one and everybody else is the wrong one. Well, they were all doing this the wrong way. Okay, and so he has to straighten that out, and he deals with that. And he tells them it's important for unity, not division. As a matter of fact, that's what Jesus prayed for in his last prayer for us. In John 17, when he has his prayer for the people, that they may be one as we are one, that they be united in unity. That's actually Jesus' prayer for us. We not have divisions. We can have different opinions. Maybe I like pink walls and you like gray walls, stuff like that. That's not an issue. But we need to, that was his goal. And so this is what Paul's addressing. When he gets to their wisdom, he's got to talk about truth and not wisdom. Wisdom at that time was not what we would look at as learning from the Proverbs. Wisdom. Wisdom at that time was, are you like the ones in Athens? Do you have philosophical wisdom? We got to read it in there. They were thinking that they were so smart. They knew all the philosophers. They knew what was going on. But they missed truth. So he deals with that. He focuses on what God's prepared. In the middle of this, he goes, do you realize that God has something that the eye has not seen and the ear has not heard and it has not even entered into the heart of man? All that God has prepared for you who love him. So he's going along and he's teaching along, and there's some hard things, and then he gives them this wonderful promise. And he's going to go along and he's going to teach them some hard things. He's going to remind them of this wonderful promise. It's kind of like the dad getting on the kid and then giving him a hug. And then he has to go on with the discipline, and then he gives him another hug. And then he reminds him that he loves him, and he gives him another discipline to get this kid to straighten out. That's what's going on here with this. So it's really cool. Your consequences of not doing this is you become a spiritual child. This is chapter 3. And he's going to say, I have to give you milk to drink and not food. You're still on the bottle. You're now 5 years old. The church was established 5 years ago, and you're still on the bottle. We got to get you to grow up. And then he gives them some motivation, and that's your awards in heaven. And you know the passage. You can build your house with gold, silver, and precious stones, or you can build your house with wood, hay, and straw, and then God will take your house and throw it in the fire, and what's left is your rewards. So hopefully there's a little bit of gold there left, right? And then I love verse 15 of chapter 3, because it says, and this is not what it says, this is the picture I have in my mind, it's that you're going to go to heaven, and then the airplane's going to fly in, and it's going to have a crash landing. You're going to get there, and you're not going to be hurt, but you are going to barely get there. That's what 1 Corinthians 3:15 reminds me of. Are any of you on that page?
Yeah, escaping through the flames.
Yeah, so you'll make it. Your heaven is secure, your home is secure. You may not have a whole lot of rewards there, but it's still heaven. It's still beyond your imagination. You're going to have a good time. Only God can give promises like that. None of us would ever come up with a plan that says, The guy who does really, really well, he'll get a lot of awards, and the guy who doesn't do really, really well but believes in me, he's gonna be there and he's gonna be so happy he's not gonna know that he didn't get the rewards. Sometimes God's plan blows my mind. So that's really cool. And then he goes, his next step is, do you know who you are? You are Christ's temple. These are the people that are divided. These are the people that have immoral stuff going on in their homes. You are Christ's temple. He is constantly reminding them who they are. And on the days when there's been times in my life when God has had to smack me around and discipline me, and I love knowing who, yes, it's horrible. Yes, I feel guilty. Yes, I carry around, I did it again. Yes, but I still know who I am. And that's really valuable, to know who you are. It's one of the things I think is missing in our next generation of children growing up. As a whole, they have no idea who they are and who their identity is, what their identity is. It's so confusing between gender identity and all this kind of stuff. They don't even know who they are. And a previous generation, they were so confused by the fact that they all came from amoebas that they didn't know they had any value. So why live? I've heard that. I think this is so important, and here constantly through this letter that's filled with fix this, fix this, fix this. If you read it, you'll see that. And all the way through this, here's your identity. You are Christ's temple. You've been bought with a price. That's 6:19. You've been purchased. You are mine. You are special. Okay? And then Paul at one point says, should I come to you with a rod, or should I come to you with love? Do you want me to come disciplining you? Do you want me to come loving you? Both ways are love. Right? As a matter of fact, it almost takes more love for the parent to do the discipline than it does to just give them the cotton candy and take them to McDonald's. The discipline is much harder on the parent to give because you don't want to, because you love your kid. So that's how this book is going. Then he's going to spend the first 6 chapters dealing with this issue, teaching them who they are and how they should behave. And then from chapter 7 on, he's going to start answering questions. He's going to answer the questions about marriage and singleness. They have all these questions about that. You got to remember, this is Corinth. They have Aphrodite up on top of the Acropolis up there, and they have all that kind of stuff and what goes on with females in this city. And so here's this. They don't know whether young women should be married or not be married. Everything's confused. So he deals with that. And then he deals with food sacrificed to idols and whether that's worth eating or not. And then about whether or not, does knowledge make you arrogant? Does love edify you? Which one helps the other person, right? So he goes to that. Then in the middle of this, he goes back to encouragement. Chapter 9, he goes, it's like being in a race. It's like, and Corinth has the Isthmus Games, and they are second to the Olympics back then. The Isthmus Games are the next biggest games to the Olympics, and it's called the Isthmus Games because they're on this isthmus, right? And they have them every 2 years. And it so happens to be, whereas the Olympics are every 4 years, so here he picks up this thing that they're very familiar with, and they maybe even be going through the games as he receives the letter, and they go, so, when you run, don't you want to win the prize? So run to win the prize. So here he's now doing an encouragement. And you find him every so often through the book. He's doing an encouragement. Run to win, and here's the difference. You run in the Isthmus Games, you may run really, really, really well and come in second and not win the prize. But in God's game, you run well, you win the prize. Everybody wins the prize who runs well. So stay and run. And that's what he says. So there's that. He gives a wonderful promise in 10:13 that you need, yes, temptation is hard. Temptation is really, really hard. But I have given you help for temptation. So if someone have 10:13 opened up? Read that for me.
No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape, also that you may be able to endure it.
So what a cool piece of encouragement that is.
Yeah.
You know, he's talking to his son. His son wants to go out with his friends again. His friends are probably drinking again. He goes, no, wait a minute. That's going to be a big temptation, right? Last time you did this, you were in a car wreck. Right? I'm making up this story. So you need help with the temptation. So let me give you the promise of help with the temptation. So take out that story and put in your own story. And mine just might be the chocolate that my family keeps giving me. That I have to put away in the cupboard and close the door so that I don't see it. Because if I see it, it will no longer be there. And it won't be in the garbage. So I'm being silly because there are really serious temptations that we all face, whether that is to feel guilt and shame, or whether that is to feel arrogant and great, or whether that is to tell someone else's story that we shouldn't tell, and that ends up being gossip, or whatever it is common to all of us to deal with these things. And so here's our promise of hope that he will give us help and a way of escape. It would benefit me to use that verse more often. I'm just thinking. So he answers their questions. He's going to tell them how to worship properly. Their worship is a mess. They come together and they've used the Lord's Supper. They have poor people and they have rich people, and they all come together, and the rich people have their dinner and the poor people have none, and they're not sharing. We don't do that here. We share very well with that. That's what's wonderful, and I love that we have this. I do not know how they were thinking that, but that's what was going on there. And that's where we get this wonderful passage that Paul describes how God told him how the Last Supper went. And I thought, wait a minute, you weren't there. When did God tell this to you? Was it while you were in the desert for 3 years? Did God explain that to you in detail? Did he come and did he give you like a mini video of what happened? But Paul knew exactly from the word of the Lord how this should be done, which I think is really interesting how that got done. And then as they gets into how church should function, he talks about the spiritual gifts and what they're for, and their purpose is for the body to work together, not for one to be better than the other, which is what they were thinking, not for this or for that, for the body to work together as a unified group. And I thought, that's really cool. That's information they desperately need. And that's information that we do pretty well around here, and I like that. And I think that is real good. So then, love surpasses all. And in the midst of this, you have that famous chapter, the love chapter. And he goes, what if I spoke with the tongues of angels? Or what if I said he's exaggerating the gifts, right? What if I had all the prophecy in the world? Or what if I gave up everything I have for the poor? And I did it all to gain acceptance, or I did it all to be seen, or I did it all for me. I didn't do it with love, then it is completely worthless. So, then your love chapter, which is said at everybody's wedding.
Yeah.
Love is patient, love is kind, it's not jealous, it's not boastful, it's not arrogant. I have learned it in so many versions that I cannot say it anymore. I'm just telling you, I will jumble it all up and get it mixed up without it needs to be. Someone want to read that? Got that sitting there?
Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking nor easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails.
Yeah, can you imagine never keeping a record of wrongs? I love my husband amazingly, and he was a great guy, but I could list some of the things that he did wrong. I was able to do that, you know. So never be jealous. Never. It's a standard. It's a high standard. And if we get to that, the closer we get to that, what a blessing it is to us. Can you imagine how wonderful it would feel for me if I no longer had a list of things against that people have done, that I no longer feel like I was insulted or anything. I mean, just the list is gone. That's a relief to your own soul. The jealousy, the envy, all that stuff, that is peace to your own soul. It's great for everybody too. But talk about release, like forgiveness is for you, not for the other person so much. Because it takes out bitterness, it takes out all those things that you sit there. Right? How many times have you sat there on the tape runs over and over and over and over? I can't get it out of my head. And the tape runs again. And I go, no, I'm not going to think about it again. And 30 seconds later, the tape runs again. Love is the solution to that. If you could get through that list, the tapes are cut and put. Of course, that's I'm telling you something that I can't do yet. So there's stuff on there that, I'm sorry, it comes up. I did that. Actually, the list that runs the tape was more of my list of bad things. I did that one time. I can remember way back when I was in high school, I did that. And it still follows me. And so I have a tendency to collect my failures and more than I collect people's whatever's against me. I intend to collect my own. So to that extent, I'm not using it towards that either. And then he is going to jump to chapter 15. And some of the people in the church have been saying that there is no resurrection from the dead. Now that's a very, very Greek philosophy viewpoint. They believe that the difference between the physical and the spiritual are such that the physical is evil and the spiritual is good. This is for people who don't believe in Jesus Christ. This is just thinking like this, okay? So the physical is, if the world of the spiritual is good, then it doesn't matter what you do in the physical because it doesn't matter anyway. That's why there was so much lasciviousness. On the other hand, if you live in this, if you do this, the physical can be so bad that you're completely in asceticism. You don't do anything for your, at all, physical. But the one thing that both sides agreed upon was the physical could not become resurrected to a good state. That was impossible. So there could not be a resurrection. You may live forever, but you're only going to be a spiritual being. And so to that extent, even Jesus didn't raise from the dead. That is Greek philosophy. So you got to realize he's communicating to that viewpoint. He's going to say, but there was a resurrection from the dead, and 500 people saw him, and Peter saw him, you guys know Peter, and James saw him, you guys have heard of James, and I saw him. Okay? So he's going to, and this, it's just, to us, we have been raised with, oh yeah, this is, of course, everybody's going to get a new body. Of course, we heard that since we were, what, 3 years old? I don't know, you know? So this is like, doesn't even phase us. To them, this was huge different viewpoint. And so he writes this wonderful chapter on what this is like, and his illustration is, okay, I'm going to put this seed, see this little thing here? I'm going to bury it, it's dead, in the ground, it's dead. We do this. Every spring you bury seeds. And what happens?
You get weeds.
You get weeds. I get weeds. But occasionally you get something good.
It's a flower.
Yes. And they grow up. And do they look like seeds when they grow up? No. Okay, so this is his illustration, and it's the one thing that is in the realm of the physical world that breaks through to their understanding. And he's a genius in figuring things like this out, because that was buried, it was dead. And it grows to this new life that's entirely different than the previous life, you know? It's not a seed anymore. So that's what he uses as his illustration. And then you get the wonderful finish of the last part of 1 Corinthians 15. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law, but thanks be to God who gives us the victory through Jesus Christ our Lord. That is so precious, especially when someone you love has died. That is just so precious. Especially when you feel, I haven't felt this yet, but you have someone is, I watched my mom ready to die. And this, she couldn't talk, she couldn't move, she couldn't, but her eyes, you could see hope in her eyes. And that's all I needed to see. And was she quoting this verse? I have no clue. Was she living this hope? Yes. And that's neat. That gives us hope as when we reach that moment. Chapter 16 of 1 Corinthians tells us a lot of what's going on. It tells us who he plans to visit. It tells us who he's there. It also has a mention. He goes, let me give you some suggestions for people who can lead your church well. And he goes, here's these 3 guys. They're from your church. Why don't you let them be your pastors? One's name is Stephanos, and one's name is Fortunatus, and one's name is Achaeus, or something like that. Let them be yours. So he gives them practical things. He says he wants to visit them. He says give them their love, and he closes it with the same affection that he started. So here's this letter, and Timothy takes it to them, and they still don't receive it very well. So that causes problems, and we will pick up there next week with that. Dear Father in heaven, I thank you for being so kind and gracious as to teach us this story and to give us Paul's story and Paul's thoughts and how he cares for his churches and how he cares for us and how you care for us. and how Jesus prayed for us, and that it's personal, it's between each of us and you. And find something in today's information that reaches each one of us personally, and let that give us great encouragement in your sight. Help us to remember who we are in you. In Jesus' name, amen.